a band. You hear it?
It is necessary for the recording of sound to convert the sound waves to corresponding changes in light. The sound waves produced by my voice are transmitted through the air to the microphone, where these sound waves are converted to changes in an electric current. These variations in the electric current are then amplified and used to control the light. This varying beam of light falling on the photoelectric cell produces variations in the electric current, which are directly proportional to the variations in the light beam. The sound track. As the varying electrical current in the photoelectric cell is small, a vacuum tube amplifier is required to increase it to the point where it will operate a loudspeaker. Soundtrack.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Occult Rejects. In today's episode, I am lucky enough to have two of my favorite co-hosts or slash guests that I've been having on quite oftenly lately. Today, I got my buddy Colby co-hosting with me. It looks like he's got his dog, and I got my cat now in the picture. What's going on, Colby? How are you?
Hey guys, doing all right.
Thank you, and thank you for jumping on a Friday night as well. And tonight, the guest that we got on tonight, I've had him on plenty of times recently, and in case you don't know who he is, or you haven't heard his prior stuff, I highly suggest to go back and check out the other episodes that he has done. But tonight, covering Prometheus and the Pillars of Heaven, we have the Headless Giant. My man, thank you so much. Everybody? Thank you for coming on again. It is always great talks with you.
It's good to talk to you guys too. This is great.
Thank you. Real quick, do you want to let everybody know what's up with your podcast and where they can find all your stuff as well?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can check me out on Spotify. I've got the Headless Giant podcast. I just recently did an episode about Mount Etna exploding, which was kind of interesting because it didn't get a lot of headlines. So if you want to know about the Mount Etna explosion and know about its significance and mythology, definitely go check that out. Headless Giant podcast.
Nice. Thank you very much. And I think I do have your links in the bottom as well. And Colby, why don't you let everybody know what's up with your stuff in case they have not heard from you before?
conspiracyplaytime.com for my one show, and that'll give you the video format. You can find that anywhere else on audio. Disinfobation, the weekly shit-talking show with @YouTruthCast on Twitter, Dusty. We do that once a week, and that is not on YouTube or Apple, but should be everywhere else. And this is going to be an awesome way to spend a Friday evening, if I don't say so myself.
Yeah, I was looking very much forward to this. Thank you. And your links are on the bottom as well, so people who are catching the live, you can go check that out now. Jesus Christ, my cat is off the hook right now. She loves this. She loves this microphone. No, I swear to you, this is gonna sound crazy. I swear this cat, there's something up when I turn this stuff on. I swear she understands like the microphone and the mixer, and there's something the fuck going on.
Your cat is named George Soros.
Crazy with this. She's like she can't stop rubbing against the shit. It's fucking bizarre.
That's good energy, man. That's good energy.
It's annoying when she starts smacking the mic though.
Just be like, hey, Sekhmet, yeah. Stop it.
Chill out, right? Oh, man. All right. So, tonight we're going to go get into Prometheus and the Pillars of Heaven. And honestly, one of the reasons why I have the Headless Giant on tonight and why I have him on for other gods as well is because me and him have said over and over again, I do think that, a lot of these gods are just like personified archetypes, or it's not even like it's just a personified idea or energy, or it's being misunderstood. And I think me and him are on the same page with a lot of that. And I would really like to have him come on and him like kind of like put his spin on it, on the gods that he's, obviously familiar with that I'm not.
Well, let's do a little recap first. I've got a couple of definitions of my own that I like to use. And first one I'd like to say is that you are not a human. You are a human-shaped donut. It's very important to remember, especially when talking about the gods, right? I've heard Christians say all the time, you're a human with a God-shaped hole in their hearts. They're trying to get you to think of one God, but it's a lot of different forces that can go in that hole. And a lot of people get mixed up with the wrong thing, and that hole gets filled up with other things. So you got a hole in your face and a hole in your ass, and your energy field is in the shape of a torus, which is a giant donut. So you are a human-shaped donut, and it's very important to remember because this is what drives you forward in life, right? Next thing I want you to remember is that there are only two languages. There's the water language, and then there's the air language. And the air language, we'll get into it in a minute, but the water language, it's important to remember, is only talking to itself. So the water language only speaks to itself. The air language is a fish inside of a cave on the shores of this vast ocean, right? And that fish is slapping its tail against the rocks, right? And as it's slapping that tail against the rocks, there's air exiting from the cave, making sounds, and those rocks are your teeth, and that tail is your tongue. And that's what's going on with the air language. You're trying to get the attention of the water language. This is the purpose of language, is to make your language speak to the ocean. And if all you're doing is breathing out and making slapping noises, there's not a very good chance that you're going to connect with the rest of that water. But there is water deep in that cave. And that's what that fish is swimming in, and that's what you are swimming in. You are made of water, and that entire ocean is made of water. So it's important to keep that in mind as you're speaking, because that is what's connecting you to everybody else, right? Third thing I'd like you to know is that the gods are a circle of influence. They're a personification of a circle of influence. So if you believe that there's one God, that circle of influence is the entire universe. If you believe there are many gods, that means each one of those gods has a circle of influence. And as you personify those things, you grow closer to that thing. And that's something called theurgy. And theurgy is a form of magic. What is magic? Magic is an illusion used to influence reality, right? So as you're thinking of something, for instance, let's say a blueprint. The blueprint isn't the building, but it's an illusion used to help you create the building in reality. So all of your thoughts are illusionary, your memories, your worries about the future. These are all illusions that are not happening in reality at the moment.
Yeah, before the blueprint, though, what was it? It was only a thought.
Right.
Like, just think that's
right.
Even just thinking the thought, the blueprint, and then I love how
illusions
you
all the way
use
down.
blueprint. That was great. I use that a lot for chess ed, so I thought, and the way you're explaining it, I thought was perfect. So,
right. So these things are important to keep in mind when dealing with the gods. The Greek gods themselves are kind of like a reference card, right? So it gives you a bit of psychology and it gives you a bit of nature. And the two of them coming together gives you those godly influences. So when you're accessing that type of energy, you're creating within yourself a space that comes in and allows those gods to occupy you. And a lot of people find that doing meditations helps them get in touch with that energy from the gods. Now, there was a guy named Iamblichus who was about 300 AD who wrote all about theurgy. And you can find it in his book, De Mysteriis. Now, in the Mysteries, that's what it's called, he talks about theurgy, and he's correcting some of the misinterpretations of other people. A lot of his works didn't survive, but that's the one that did. And a lot of people are really confused about it. They think it's like some sort of elevated superstition. Superstition would be an illusion used to influence reality. It's back to that magical concept. Now, these superstitions and these practices that he's talking about in there are ways that you can grow in a deeper connection with those gods. Iamblichus thinks that the gods don't come down, but you can go to them. So this brings us back to the origin of the gods in this mythology system, right? So in the beginning was this chaotic void, this watery darkness, as they call it in several different texts, right? So in the beginning is this watery darkness. The water language, again, is this watery darkness, right? And what happened is these two forces started to form. It was Gaia and Uranus. And then a third force came in. This is numerology, right? You've got the one and the many, and you've got the earth and the sky. And what brought them together was Eros, or love. Later on, it was called the Orphic Egg, right? And the Orphic Egg brought these two forces together. You see the feminine, which would be the snake wrapping around, and then the point in the middle, which would be the egg.
Now, do you
Orphic
think
Egg sort of represents that? Yeah.
Do you think, like, you know, like kind of like now they've been, when two things work together, that's also kind of like a yoked. So like,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm wondering, like you're mentioning Orphic Egg, you're talking about them coming together. I'm thinking about, you know.
Yoked is perfect, because what's that little thing in the middle? That's the start of the life, right? It's all geometric. Like if you look at an egg, all you can really do is think geometry. It's almost like the idea of the forms, which is one of these concepts that Iamblichus talks about very frequently. It's pure form. Egg is pure form. There's no other sort of indicator of what it is, right? I mean, at least for the most part, you've got two different eggs from two different species, and if they're close enough together, you can't really tell the difference because it's almost pure geometry. And if we're coming from that pure geometry, that's something to think about, right? And once that egg hatches in the beginning, you get Phanes. What they called them in the late Greek period was Phanes. And Phanes was this genderless sort of god that was wrapped around by this snake, and he was considered to be the protogenous, or the first essence, right? And so by him influencing Gaia and influencing Uranus, they came together and created the Titans, right? And the Titans right now would be the family we're talking about. So as we come down the Titan line, we find Iapetus, which is the father of the gods that we're going to be speaking about. We've got Atlas, we've got his brother Epimetheus and Prometheus, right? They sort of ditched the family later on. And then you've got another brother.
Oh, you know what I want to ask you real quick, because I'm just to clarify something. Have you seen the movie The Immortals?
I have, yes.
You know, who are those people that are just trapped in that square, that cage? Was that the Titans? No, right? I always get confused. I'm like,
I think they were the Titans, but weren't they working for some malevolent entity that wanted to take over Earth?
Yeah. No, I was just I was just wondering if those were like the Titans as well when you mentioned the Titans. Do you remember how that ends with them fighting in the sky?
I believe so. I think there was a lot of occult symbolism that I think it was actually, I saw a breakdown of it, and it was like they were going over all of the elements of these creation myths in the movie itself. And they were doing it in kind of a subverted, not even like overt way. Yeah. Like they would substitute these images from these creation myths. And I think we're at a point now where the archons are turning. Right? And these archons turning in the heavens are creating all of these new illusions, like Mount Etna exploding, right? Like the balls in the sky, like I was talking about earlier. Yeah. All of these things have to do with the changing of the ages, and we're seeing them now, but most people aren't even paying attention. They're far too materialistic to be paying attention to actual details of these things and judging it back by mythology. And judging it by mythology would be more of a like the tarot, for instance. What the tarot is kind of abstraction of all these mythological events, right? And so what they call this family tree of gods, they call it the theogony, right? And the theogony, if you lay it side by side with the Kabbalah tree, you're going to find something interesting, because it's both the same thing, right? It all comes from the one thing. It splits apart into Uranus and Gaia, and then you get all these gods branching out of it, right? And so what represents the theogony is this more abstract version, which would be the Kabbalah. And they talk about how, you know, the Hebrew Kabbalah and then the Greek Kabbalah and all these other different forms, well, it's because they all fit together in this abstraction of emanations. And the emanations is like from the point of creation on down to us, we're sort of like just another aspect of all of these gods that came before us. And that's especially true in the case of Prometheus, right?
And, I think this actually really, real quick, and then you can get back to the Prometheus. I think this real quick kind of explains, even in a sense of like how I believe that these things are just being personified when they're not supposed to be. Because if you have, like you said, you have Hebrew. You have Hebrew, Greek. Then there's even like you spell Kabbalah a different way because of Catholicism, or there's all these different types of Kabbalah, and then there's all these different ways that all these other spiritual beliefs and religions even all tie into it. It's because all you're seeing is different versions of that personification of that idea.
Right.
That's how they match, because it's just an archetype. It's somebody else made them look a little bit different. Or maybe that's them on a bad day instead of a good day.
Right. It's all being filtered through human experience. And that's really what personification is it's being filtered through you, and you're interpreting those energies that are coming from above. And everybody does it, whether they know it or not. One person's idea of Jesus is going to be different from another person's idea of Jesus. Take, for example, the movie Talladega Nights, right?
I like my Jesus in a tuxedo.
Exactly, right? He's praying to baby Jesus. Jesus in a tuxedo over here. He's like a spy or something. And they've all got these different personifications. And why do they have those different personifications? They're filtering it through their perceptions. And I don't want to say one is right and one is wrong, because really what's happening is they're trying to tap into those energies. And the only way you can tap into those energies from the divine is if you filter it through your own experience, right? And so everybody gets hung up on whether there should be tradition, hard traditions, or there should be, new things that are formed based off of new events and new experiences. I can't really say either way, because it's all being filtered through your experiences. And it really matters is the rhetoric and how you connect with other people on these levels. And really, if all you're doing is saying, no, it must be hard tradition, or no, it must be this new system that I've come up with, all you're doing is shutting down that rhetoric. And so when I'm giving these definitions, I try to do it in such an abstract way that people can connect with them in their own ways, because that's the way that you connect to people, and that's the way you can spread that light a little bit more efficiently, right? And in the case of Prometheus, like that's really the personification there, is the light bringer, And so that's what I really like about it, is because one of the things, well, we'll get into it in a minute, his family are the Titans, right? And so Prometheus is the one who created humans, so our family comes from the Titans too, right? So everybody who talks about the Olympians and how they revere these Olympian gods and everything, it's like, well, is that really your family though? Like you're connecting with all of these energies that are representative of the absolute reality in nature right now. But that's not really your family. Your family comes from this idea of forethought. And another thing about the Greeks is when they created these gods, they did so in a way to make them efficiently match up with the words themselves. So Prometheus means forethought. His brother, Epimetheus, means afterthought. His other brother, Atlas, means endurance. And his last brother, Metodius, that means powerful hubris, right? And those are the things that make up our family, right? So, also, Iapetus, his father, the piercer, the god of mortality, right? So you're starting to see how this family works. It's not just personifications. These are words that have meaning, right? So the god of mortality gives birth to forethought. Forethought gives birth to us. You're starting to see where I'm saying? So like, as long as we're in that forethought matrix, that's sort of how humanity sort of comes forth, right? And so Iapetus was married to either Clymene or Asia, two Oceanid nymphs coming from another of the Titans, Oceanus, right? So Oceanus is like kind of the grandfather of humanity, right? And Clymene is the Oceanid of fame. So fame and mortality get together to create forethought, afterthought. Like you're starting to see the pattern here. What do all these famous people end up doing? They're on an arc of their own, right? And they create something. All these people connect with it, and that sort of extends their mortality by giving them a wider sphere of influence. I'm not saying that famous people are closer to gods, but psychologically speaking, they occupy a different portion of the brain.
They look at themselves as if they are. That's for sure.
Absolutely. They certainly do. But that whole idea there is that there's something happening when you become known in other people's heads, right? And climbing, she was an Oceanid, so it's like fame over water. So it's like more than one continent has heard about you. And that's sort of the fame that they talked about back then. And if you look at Hercules or Heracles, he was famous all over Asia and Europe, right? They've got Heracles in India. They've got Heracles in Germany. They've got Heracles in England, right? This guy was famous all over the world. Right?
That's right. You've even said that about Kanye West getting bad press, or Elon Musk. People have so many different filing cabinets in their head with those people's names in them. Here's the Kanye that's the music, the Kanye that's crazy, the Kanye with the shoes, the Elon with Twitter, the Elon with AI, the Elon with spaceships. You have it is just massive amounts of reasons for that person's name to be renting space in your head. They become gods.
The god of mortality is attracted to fame. The god of mortality is attracted to fame. That's how they feel like they can extend their influence and become more like the gods. These are just the words that they use to put this thing together. So it is an index card of these different forces with psychology included, right? They're just showing it to you, and you're like, oh, these are interesting people.
Yeah, they call themselves stars, too, which also, if you look at that
Bingo.
fucking happen. Yeah.
Absolutely, right? So once you get to know this family that we come from, you can get to know your psychology a little bit better, right? And their psychology when it comes to the Olympians really starts to make a difference. So this family right here, Iapetus means the piercer, right? But he's the god of mortality. Mortality is piercing something, right? Maybe mortality is piercing the infinite. Because if it was infinite, it would never change, right? So you've got earth and you've got sky, and without people, they would never really change. But then we build these huge buildings, and we're piercing the infinite reality that would be infinite without our influence, right? As the mortals pierce into it, they start to change the nature of that infinity, right? And so he's the piercer. He's also called, in the Bible, they refer to Iapetus as Japheth because the J and the I were interchangeable back then. So Japheth was also the son of Noah, right? And he was the son that brought about the Japhethians, or the white people, the white race, right? So each one of Ham, Shem, and Japheth, they produced different races. Ham would be the dark races. Shem, I believe, he was the Middle Eastern and Asiatic races. And then Iapetus, Japheth, produced the white races, right? According to the Noah myth, right? So that's something interesting to keep in mind, especially, when it comes to applying mythology to what's going on today, right? So Iapetus is the one that's giving birth to. Now, I don't necessarily mean it's a hard and fast rule that yes, this was a white race, because later on down the line there were white supremacists who created cults of Prometheus for that very reason, because it had these different alternative things going on in the Bible, and they're like, well, obviously this means something. Yeah, it's psychology in nature. You're not going to put too fine a point on this. Like, this is energy you can bring into yourself. And how do you bring it into yourself? This is the power of analogy, right? What they're doing with these stories is they're creating an analogy so powerful that you can bring that energy into yourself. Analogy is one of the most powerful things you could ever make, because once that analogy sticks, it's going to be used over and over and over again. The tortoise and the hare, why do we still know that? It's hundreds and hundreds of years old, right? These analogies, you can't have religion without analogies, right? All of these biblical literalists still say that these analogies that Jesus spoke were very important, but he only spoke in analogies. You know what I mean? So what is that telling you? You can't have religion without analogy. The power of analogy connects these disparate dots and makes something that is greater than the whole or the sum of its parts.
I've always heard that Jesus went back to India and learned Buddhism in the missing years. Now I'm starting to think he might have went somewhere and learned marketing. Like, where were they teaching that back in the day? I don't know.
It was all over, man. Okay, so you've got the sophists too. And the sophists went up against the Greek philosophers. And the Greek philosophers kept trying to nail down these sophists. But the sophists would work for whoever paid them. They would argue any point. I think we went over this in the episode on, oh man, I'm blanking on his name.
I know you did bring up the sophists, yeah. I can't
yeah, but that's where it all comes from, is the idea that you could argue for money. And it takes analogy to a whole new level. Now you can use analogy like a weapon, right? And the sophists did this, used it as a weapon and sort of dulled people's minds and brought them into these really easy points that they could make that really didn't have any logical sense. They would use logical fallacies over and over.
That's like fucking law, modern day law. I mean, you get those motherfuckers make. Okay, there you go.
Sophists were all lawyers. And once you get into the legal profession, you start to see how those lawyers are really spitting on the face of the Greek gods that they put up in their courtrooms, Because here's another Greek god that nobody really knows about. Oh, man, I'm blanking on her name. I can't believe it. Okay, so everybody knows the image, Justice is blind, and she's holding up
yeah. What the fuck? It's on the tip of my tongue, too. Anyway.
Yeah.
I got to look it up. But anyways, that's a Greek goddess that represents divine order. She's not actually in the courtroom, right? She's there judging the stars. She's there judging the moon. She's making sure that everything stays on its track. And they were so bold as to take that image and say, we are divine justice. We are divine justice. This is why they're wearing the black cloaks, because they're the limitation on divine justice. They're the Saturnian energy. Now, Saturn was also, Kronos, also these titans. So these titan figures play a bigger role in our everyday society because a lot less people know about the titans than they do about the Olympians. And the Olympians, to them, that's just a funny story that they tell about Zeus and Prometheus and all the rest of these Olympians. And they don't really go back to the Titans. They don't really talk about Kronos that much. But those have a much bigger impact on our society today, right?
It's interesting. Well, you mentioned the Olympians, but that was actually something I was going to eventually even cover on my own show with somebody. The Arbitel. I mean, you probably have. Do you actually know what that is?
Arbitel. Yeah. I think I've heard the term, but I haven't heard it out loud. I probably read it somewhere.
Yeah, it's based on the Olympic spirits. It's just, and it's I'm doing it for multiple reasons. One, because look, you haven't probably heard of it, or maybe you have, just in a different name. But for a few reasons is one, I don't think too many people know about it, and I do feel just recently, in the last 5 or 10 years, it just seems like there's this idea of magic and symbolism and what's done, and that's all that exists. And just from my experience in ceremonial magic, and then coming into the conspiracy community, I haven't heard one motherfucker bring up a grimoire. I'm just this is totally different symbols, names, ideas. This is why the conspiracy community, in my opinion, knows jack shit, because nobody's bringing much to the table.
Christianity erased all
and I'm
this stuff.
I'm just going to start, not teaching people how to use it, but putting out what it is, what the fuck it's used for. Look at these symbols. Have you ever seen this before? Probably not. Have you ever heard of this name? No, probably not. Maybe you can go look for this in front of your face somewhere else. There's so much people have never fucking heard of.
It's the dualism, right? because they think that since it's not from Christianity, it all has to be evil, right? But Christianity is just a form of theurgy, right? What you're doing when you're engaging, when you're praying, when you're going to church, when you're engaging with Mass and Passover and all the rest of the stuff, that's theurgy. That was described by the Greeks and then adopted by the Christians, right? So the biggest theurgy symbol that we know associated with the Olympics has to do with Prometheus. Where's the Promethean flame? What are they doing when they're starting the Olympic Games? They're running that torch all the way around the world, and they're bringing it and lighting the flame. You know what they used to do at the Olympics way back in ancient Greece? They would run that torch all over Greece and then bring it and light the thing. That was a Promethean theurgic ritual. They're still doing that ritual today, only they don't talk about Prometheus when they do it because it's not for you. When they killed the gods, they weren't doing you any favors, right? They want to make themselves into Prometheus, and they want to be the ones who dictate how much light is divvied out. That's all there is to it. They want to be the ones to say, we're the light bringers. This is why we do these rituals at the Olympics. This is why we do all these things at the Olympics. We're the magicians. You're our subjects. That's really what they're telling you. And everybody is doing theurgy if they do any kind of religious practice, right? One of the religious practices I see all the time, especially on Reddit, is rituals to Scientia.
The
right?
Church of Reddit.
Yes, the Church of Reddit. Now, you worship Scientia, the goddess of science, by denying she exists, right? So you have to deny that the gods exist as a reverent sacrifice to this goddess of science. And they'll do it all the time, too. It's a theurgic ritual. They if you go onto those atheist Reddit forums, all they ever do is engage in this theurgical ritual, and that brings them closer to the goddess of science.
I always say that atheists are some of the most religious people out there.
Absolutely. They just have no idea.
Yeah. It's fucking, it's ironic what they engage in, because it is like, yeah, it's like you're saying.
Where do you draw the line on worship?
Nowhere, probably. I mean,
you'll go into that building, right? And you'll sit in the pews and you'll listen to the speaker and you'll sing the songs. But when you go into that building, you sit in the dark room and you watch the images flicker on the screen. That's not worship. But the other one, that's worship. How and why are they different? I'm sorry, but if you're going into the cave and you're taking part in this birth, death, rebirth ritual by watching the movie on the screen, you're worshiping. That's worship. That's theurgy. You're there for a religious experience that you're experiencing with everybody else in that crowd with you. You're there for the magic of film. It's theurgy. You're worshiping, and you don't know it because you don't see the steeple on the top of the building. Unfortunately, not every church has a steeple.
Yo, you know what's interesting? You know, I think it was a church. This is like getting off topic. We're going back to something that you said before that I was like, oh, man. You mentioned the tongue before. I had recently gone out to, I'm pretty sure this is at a church. I went out to Tennessee, Nashville recently. My wife had to do something and for work, and there was a way, you know, I was able to go and spend a few days and kind of go off and do my own thing. So this is the first time I used my camera. I had no stand. I didn't have a strap. So when I released the footage, sorry, it's a little shaky. 4 pounds, believe it or not, starts to feel heavy after a while.
Well, I know.
So you know, it wasn't the best, but I mean, I was blown away actually by the quality. I'm not trying to brag, but like I was filming a church, and like I'm like, you know, on the streets you look up and you see this symbol, and it looks like something, and it's like, okay, yeah. That kind of looks like a flower petal type thing around a circle. And like now I'm sitting here with like my camera and I'm like zooming in on all these like things on all the way on the top of the peak, you know, because I'm able to do it with the camera. And it records in 4K so I can actually see like fucking detailed. So like I finally went to go look at this stuff yesterday. And I was like, wow. I was like, you know, I'm actually impressed on the detail of it. And like I was looking at one part going by and I'm like, I paused and I was like, wait, are those tongues? I'm like, yo, from in the street, I would swear those were flower petals. But now since it's like I'm like up there on the building looking right at the fucking thing, I'm like, yo, that almost looks like fucking tongues, man. I forgot why I had brought that all up, but you had mentioned something about like the tongue earlier and things maybe not being what you actually think they are and all this. Like,
you worship with your tongues. They're producing the symbol that creates a resonance with what they're doing inside of the building. Right? That's what they're doing. So by creating those analogies in the artwork, they're drawing a connection. And these connections, again, it all goes back to the beginning. And Iamblichus talks about this. It's love that creates the analogy, right? It's love that creates the connection. And when you're expressing that connection through analogy, you're creating a connection through love. These two things, you're saying, love each other and produce a child. And that is the illusion of magic. When you've produced these two things together, when you're creating that analogy, you're producing a third thing. And that third thing resonates on a whole different level. So let's say that the crown and the scepter and all of the symbols of royalty came through the holy men to the kingdom so that the king can have these symbols of authority. And let's say the symbols you make in your own life work on that same level. So not only are you receiving the symbols from the above, you're also tracing on the water language those things that now resonate in other ways, right? It's a read-write program. So as you make the symbols, that writes. And as you receive the signals, that reads, right? It's a two-way street. And once we can start to understand that, we can understand the power of analogy a little bit better, because these two things are completely related. We're writing on the fabric of existence. We're reading the fabric of existence. The fabric of existence isn't just right here, isn't just the physical. It's something more than that. And by creating these analogies, we can start to come in tune with them. We can start to create a resonance within ourselves. This is why singing is so important in the church. You may not feel it, but somebody else is feeling it.
You know, those things are built in specific ways, I think, because of all of that coming together as like a recipe.
Absolutely.
The singing, the sound, even the gold everywhere for possibly conduct electricity. I don't know. But like, you know, the way it's built, like the glass, that's all, I believe, done to produce some sort of effect.
Right. And just because it's a little bit harder to read and write on this level of existence, where we have to scratch it into stone or we have to chisel it out, doesn't mean that what we do does not resonate with the infinite, doesn't resonate with this water language that we're all built out of, right? We're all built out of it on a quantum level. You reach that water language, and we're resonating with it right now. They used to call it the ether, and they tried to get rid of the ether, but guess what? It's coming back. We could talk about, you know, all of these different quantum theories that have to do with life and have to do with existence and have to do with our perception. And we can start to see the water language reemerging, the ethers reemerging again. You know,
it reminds me of that line from Gladiator. What we do echoes in eternity. Or I think that's Gladiator. It's some famous fucking movie.
What do the gods eat? Ambrosia.
We talked about this last time we were all together.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that ambrosia is not mortal. We're producing the food of the gods. In our symbols, in our speech, in our songs, we're producing those symbols, because what we do reverberates through infinity. And, you know, when you come to things like Prometheus and you see them using that same ritual at the Olympics, and you see them revering these symbols that they create at the Olympics, you understand that these agendas have real impact and lasting impact on future generations. And getting to that point, you just start to understand these things are important, and what we think and what we do actually matters. I always love how the socialists have convinced us that where we spend our money doesn't matter because the billionaires control it all. That doesn't make sense. The billionaires got their money from us. Where we spend our money, where we spend our time, where we spend our energy actually makes a difference. We have the agency that can change this system. It may take a little bit longer than just one lifetime, but we can do it. We just have to focus on it. And the reason why theurgy has become so occulted is because it gives you that focus, because you can start to feel it. You can feel the energies around you start to change.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I really want to. I have to with this. I think the show even dropped today. I think me and Teresa did it today and then dropped it today on the Spiritual Gangsters, and it was kind of like a thing for June because there is, I guess, Pride Month. And
are you guys sponsored by Target on this
No,
episode?
no, but the thing is, I think it was kind of like, listen, I respect her religion. She respects my beliefs. And she kind of thought it was more of like a June for Jesus and kind of like a screw you to the other shit that's going on right now. And it was on Eucharists in the miracles of the Eucharist. And I was actually like, I'm totally down to cover that. In magic, I used that so much. And it was not the cakes of light. I legit actually went out and bought the ones that they fucking use in the church. I swear to God. It was just easy, cheap. Came in this big 1,000 fucking count fucking plastic thing. I used that. I had a tray. I had a cup. I put wine in it. A lot of times, all I was doing, I maybe did a banishing ritual just to make sure I cleared out the garbage so maybe God can hear me a little bit better. But a lot of times when I felt something, I felt the presence that moved me. The thing, I won't forget these times. That's how much it touched me. I did like Eucharist, like type of just like fucking praying to God. Very like what you were saying, theurgical, like kind of stuff like that. That alone, just by myself, me just trying to clear my head and actually be honest and be my real self to God and speak to whatever God was, I had the most profound feelings around me and within inside my body.
Authenticity. That's the key. And if you can't be authentic with yourself, how the hell are you going to be authentic with your God?
He didn't know already. What the fuck am I hiding it from?
Right. But no, most people aren't even authentic with themselves. And if they're not authentic with themselves, what chance do they ever have of loving, making that connection with the divine? And, they talk about self-esteem a lot in psychology. What is that self-esteem? That's the connection with your deep, authentic self. That's the love of self. And if you don't have that connection, if you can't say you love yourself, what chance do you have?
Yeah, you don't have a chance at all.
Right.
You have no chance.
What
at
if
all.
you're just kind of like neutral about yourself? Can you still?
Yeah.
Well, I think if you're
You can
neutral,
have a good life.
If like for me, I think as long as there's a feeling of wanting to better yourself,
Well,
that kind of shows love for self in a way, or at least you want to improve.
I was just asking for a friend.
Yeah, no. But
the concept of love in terms of the Greek eros, it was the connection. It was the bringing the two things together. And you can be neutral about yourself as long as you have that connection with the authentic self, right? So it's not necessarily an ego thing. I love my ego. I love the God within. No, it's not about that. It's more about connecting with the authentic self, opening yourself up so that you can hear what the body is saying to the mind. I mean, I know it's not popular in, Western medicine, but you can control the hormones in your own body. Just by thinking about it, just by connecting, just by having that rational conversation with yourself about certain topics, you can control the hormones. And those hormones won't control you anymore. That's something they get into in Chinese medicine a lot, right? So having that deeper conversation with yourself, with your body, will get you into the mode of being able to enhance your own experience inside this earth suit. Right? And making that connection is that key, is that point where now you can know what what voices in your head are coming from your thoughts versus what voices in your head are coming from an imbalance in your body, right?
Yeah.
And the one thing the Greeks had on us is they knew which voices in their head were theirs and which voices in their heads came from the gods. And if we don't know the difference, guess what? It might not always be the good ones that are coming through. It might not always be the good ones that you listen to.
You know what I want? I want to just like read this real quick, and like I know this might be very controversial right now, especially like
controversy.
Yeah, I see Luke's in the chat, and he's probably not gonna like this, but like I always say, and I'm the first fucking person to say, Crowley was an animal at times, and I do not put him up on a pedestal. But even when it comes to like we're talking about theurgy and the Eucharist and stuff like that. You know, if you just think of someone using a regular Eucharist, it doesn't have to be a cake of light. This is even something that he says that I even think shows, and I even came across this, and I forgot that I've read this before in, I think, Magic Theory and Practice, but, like, somebody was even talking about how, like, the Eucharist is just, like, it's like a lost practice that was actually severely stressed by a lot of, like, even religious people and magicians. And this is an excerpt out of one of his things. He says, a Eucharist of some sort should most assuredly be consummated daily by every magician, and he should regard it as the main sustenance of his magical life. It is of more importance than any other magical ceremony because it is a complete circle. The whole of the force expended is completely reabsorbed. Yet the virtue is that vast gain represented by the abyss between man and God. So basically what I'm getting out of that is you're connecting yourself between God and the abyss. The magician becomes filled with God, fed upon God, intoxicated with God. Little by little, his body will become purified by the eternal lustration of God. Day by day, his mortal frame, shredding its earthly elements, will become in very truth the temple of the Holy Ghost. Day by day, matter is replaced by spirit, the human by the divine, and ultimately the change will be complete. God manifest in flesh.
Absolutely.
That's pretty fucking powerful. Right,
what you're doing right there is creating that love of the divine. That love of the divine is like a magnet, a magnetic force. It's bringing the two together. And, you know, you get into this idea of man becoming God, and people freak out about it. But really what you're trying to do is you're trying to become closer. You can never become a God. You'll always be immortal. Always be immortal. But what you can do is you can start to manifest that love of the God in yourself and to the rest of the world. And that's a very important thing.
To the rest of the world, too, yeah, that's very important.
That means not fucking over your family. That means not fucking over, you know, strangers that you meet on the street because you could feel what they're going through. That means having real sympathies, having real empathy, having real emotions without clogging it up with all of this stuff that other people want to put in you.
Yeah.
Because the divine is not man. As you develop that relationship, you'll find, like all of these different polytheistic religions, they were saying different things the same way, right? And that's important. As they're saying these different things the same way, they were trying to connect people with the divine, right? And Christianity's trying to connect people with the divine. And all of these different practices get polluted by what people inject into it. And the only way around that is things like the Eucharist, things like singing, things like getting out of yourself, getting out of your body for a minute. And this is what theurgy is all about. If you read Iamblichus, it's like theurgy is separating the soul from the body, right? So you're not living in this material state. You're living as something better. You're living as something higher up, filling your life with meaning. And that's the thing that a lot of these nihilists really don't seem to grasp is if there's no meaning in the world and you can't prove it, then there must also be infinite meaning in the world. since he can't prove that either, right? What you have to do is get out of the material, get out of and Iamblichus talks about how it takes 40 years to study math enough to become a philosopher. How many philosophers engage in that kind of theurgical practice today? None of them, right? But
I suck at math. I'm fucked, dude. Like, I've done psychedelics to the point where I saw the math and I was like, oh man, I shouldn't have cheated in high school, because it totally does run everything.
But that's the thing. It's like the math that they teach in high school isn't the math that was taught by people like Pythagoras. Pythagoras used math to connect to the divine. He used that as his theurgy, because these were things, numbers can't be touched. They exist outside of our reality. They're concepts. They're metaphysics. Even if, they have sections on math today, but they shouldn't be in that section. It should be in metaphysics, because these are things that cannot be touched by humans. These are concepts outside of ourselves, while also simultaneously existing inside of our heads. Understanding the 1 through 9 numerology starts to give you a basis for why math is done, why these things happen. It's not just to build edifice. It's not just to build artifice. It's to build the spirit outside of the self. I remember I used to have this Flash comic, right? You guys know the Flash character?
Yeah.
They had this concept of the super speed, right? And some people would get to the super speed through emotional states of mind, right? And others would get there through formulas that they created for super speed, right? And all these different Flashes would have their own method of getting to that super speed state. But it's the same as theurgy. That's what they were talking about in that Flash comic book, is these people have these different ways of approaching the divine, approaching that limit, going beyond the liminal state. That's what they were talking about in these comics. And, the way that they laid it out, it was like, no, this is super speed. It's the speed force. You've got to come into the speed force. They're just talking about theurgy in different ways,
Yeah,
the Flash.
I brought that up kind of like, like even with like the Eucharistic thing that we covered today with me and Teresa. I don't know if I said it or if it was on the camera or off, but whatever. Like I was even saying, like, I understand like these things are more of like Catholic based. And I said, I'm sure there has to be other examples in other ways. I said, because like, to me, all this is just like the way their recipe looks. I said, think of a roll. Think of a roll. How many versions of a fucking roll is there? But it's still a roll, in a sense. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, there's probably, it may not just be like that same type of Eucharistic thing with the turning to flesh and blood and all that stuff. Maybe they have like, but there has to be some other ones, I'm sure, because I think there is just like there's a certain GPS way of doing it, but just everybody's experience because of their surroundings, where they live.
Aesthetics.
With their aesthetics around them to even express their experience. Maybe I only have certain birds to express a sound or a lifting feeling, and then another part of the area, the earth does. So that's why their bird is used in occultism. Like, it's just, I think there's what I'm getting at is I think there is like an overall recipe that works. It's just It looks different in different areas in different ways. And
aesthetics can transcend class. It can transcend race. It can transcend all of these different things. And see, the reason why the Iamblichus revival of paganism didn't work is because the Catholic Church did theurgy better, because their aesthetics transcended all of the cultural differences that the Greeks had with a lot of other different cultures. Like the way he described it in Syria didn't necessarily resonate with the Romans, right? It didn't necessarily resonate with these other cultures the same way that they were able to do with Christianity. So Christianity took those aesthetics from Iamblichus and said, we're going to simplify this and give it to everybody. We're going to be the universal church. And at the very same time, you've got Iamblichus talking in 300 AD, you've got the Catholic Church centralizing and finalizing the aesthetics of the mass.
Yo, I say this. I've probably said this is 100th time in the 2.5 years that I've had this show. There's a timeline video, I think, Art of the Dark Ages. And if you go watch that video, you will see the art of Jesus Christ. And depending where he was and what other religions were around there, his art kind of looked a little bit like what they were also into then. You know, and when where places where ISIS was still big, all of a sudden, oh, we got to start throwing Mary in the art. You know, we gotta have him. Yeah, like there was even ones where he looked fucking androgynous, like he had hips on him.
Yeah,
Jesus was trans,
and that was the Visigoths that were making him look like that. Actually, so yeah,
right. They knew aesthetics, and they were able to syncretize and create the theurgical experience that connected with more people than the paganism did, because they were the first globalist religion. I know Christians don't like to hear that, but they were the first globalist religion because they figured out the formula. And the formula was, we have to connect with people where they are. And we have to do it in a way that everybody can access the Eucharist. Everyone can access our form of theurgy. And it was a breakthrough for the time because they were able to connect the divine with man of any type. Iamblichus, he was an elitist, right? He believed that you had to do these very specific Eucharistic type things every day in this way and that way. And in that doing so, he created superstition, because what you have to do is you have to separate the superstition from a genuine experience. That's the thing that really separates superstition from theurgy, is it's very surface level, right? It doesn't have that genuine nature to it. You have to be able to connect with it on a genuine, authentic way, or else it doesn't work anymore. It just turns into a hollow practice. It's just tapping a doorknob. It's, you know, it's not the same thing as the theurgical experience and having that deeper realization, because all of this stuff has to do with the internal movings, right? If all it is an external thing, it's no longer esoteric. It's all exoteric. And then it loses its meaning, like the Saturn squares. Have you ever seen the Saturn squares?
Yes. That was it. That's in the same episode that I was just talking about. That shows different variations of Jesus. They even show that. They show that, and they even show the fish about, like, they're showing like how occulted Christianity was.
Christianity was a form of magic, and then they sort of got rid of it. And they didn't do that as a favor to you. They didn't get rid of theurgy as a favor to you. They didn't do that. They didn't kill your gods as a favor. They did it as a way to centralize. And they figured the best way to centralize it is to market it to all the different cultures and bring in the syncretisms and bring it all together in an art form that everybody of every class could now identify with. And it was a masterful retelling of all the old stories. No hate, right? They did it. You connected with those people. But at the same time, they also killed it. So they killed the goose that was laying them the golden egg, and I don't feel sorry for them now, because everybody's starting to take a real hard look at the Catholic Church and what they've been up to for the past 2,000 years. And it's not pretty.
It don't look good.
False priests, false princes. That's the uniting factor beyond all these different things. They use their power in a very negative way. And so I think the only way to get out of this mess is to redefine what they did. They got rid of the definitions of God. They got rid of the definitions of magic. They got rid of all the things that people knew on an instinctive level, because it was instinctive at one point. It wasn't logical. Now we've got to logically deconstruct these things and get back to the instinct, get back to the theurgy. You know, I don't want to sound like a revival preacher, but God damn it, we got to revive this shit.
You do sound like one until you said, God damn it. So you came back to earth. Hey, I got a question for you, because I wanted to ask this earlier, but now we're back on the topic. You were talking about, like, do we do new gods? And what is your opinion on that? Like, in today's time, would it be a valuable step to, like, maybe do some new gods and start some new religions?
The ether is a read-write program. The ether is a read-write program. So not only do you read the traditions of history, but you can write your own.
Yeah, it's been a while. I mean, unless you talk about Mormons and Scientology, it's been a fucking while.
All they were doing was reinventing the past too. So maybe you take a little bit of both, and maybe you sprinkle in there the stuff that works.
That is even true. I mean, the Mormons even do use like the Bible. So I mean, it's like
they use a little bit of everything. Science fiction is in both Scientology and Mormonism, but if you look at the religion of the secret societies, that's a lot of fucking sci-fi too, because they are doing a lot of the same shit, I think.
Well, here's the thing. All right, what we're living through now, this is a little theurgy of my own. This goes into the pillars of heaven, right? What are the pillars of heaven? They are the psychological links between us and authority, right? That's what's holding up the heavens. What did Zeus do to Atlas? After Atlas, he was the commander of the Titans, lost the battle. He condemned him to hold up the sky. He wasn't holding up the earth. He was holding up the sky. And what was in the sky? All the constellations. What are the constellations? Those are the cultural stories that they passed down to future generations. He made him the pillar of heaven. He had to hold up the entire theurgical storytelling that is based off of the constellations. He was the connection between man and authority, which was Zeus. He made him the pillar of heaven forever and ever, right? So in doing so, he made him the spine of the book. The heavens were the book. And he said, this is the way I maintain my authority, is by maintaining the stories that I put in the sky. Because Zeus was making constellations all the time. If you know the history, he was kicking up the crab. Everybody knew what the crab meant. He was kicking up Orion. Everybody knew what the hunter was. You know, and all these different things kept happening over and over and over again. He made him the pillar of heaven that would hold up the book forever and ever. That's not only a punishment, that's a gift. He now gets to look down on us. You know what I'm saying? Like, this guy is the cornerstone of the entire concept of a heavenly authority, the holy bureaucracy, right? To come up to him, to come up to the gods, you have to go through Atlas. You've got to climb that ladder, right? So let's get into Prometheus for a second.
Woo,
We
back,
kinda got
back
off
to
track.
Prometheus. It's all right. I mean, right? We talked about some good shit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is all theurgy, what we're describing here. So what are they doing to Atlas now? They're trying to kick him in the knees. They're trying to say all of this stuff that you believed in. Themis. I can't believe I forgot her name. Themis is the goddess of justice, divine justice. She's got the sword in one hand. She's got the scales
She's
in
on
the
the
other.
justice card, the way you described her.
That's what she is. That's Themis. This is what I keep talking about. Everything in the major arcana specifically references the gods of old. They all do.
And I think a lot of them are all, in my opinion, all states of alchemy.
Right. Well, see, the
Personified.
gods are shapeshifters. The gods are shapeshifters.
Alchemy.
Exactly. They're shapeshifters because they're closer to formlessness. They're closer to the water language. So they can change shape and they can show up in all these different tarot cards.
Those are the reptilian shapeshifters David Icke was talking about, and he just didn't want to come out and say it the way we did it.
There's more than one shapeshifter, I'll tell you that much. And the higher up you go, the more formless it gets. And then, you know, the Greeks, the Platonics, the guys who believed in the Neoplatonism, which would be Iamblichus, he believed that the world of forms was the highest emanation. But I think that he was kind of off a little bit. I think it was the world of formlessness that gave birth to the world of forms, because he's talking about these geometric figures and their absolute representation in all of these different things. But I think there's something behind that, because to have the one, you have to have the love in the chaos to bring that one together. And then you have to have that love in the chaos that will bring the two together. And then you have to have that love in the chaos that brings the three out of the two.
I mean, this
see
even
what I'm
goes.
saying?
This even goes again. Like, really, if you're, again, we're talking about theurgy, and let's say you're doing some sort of practice. Aren't you actually welcoming the chaos?
Absolutely.
Because chaos is just change. Chaos is me switching from Marlboros to Newports. Chaos is me quitting sweets. Because that is change. You know what I'm saying? That's as simple as that. So when you're asking, my opinion, if I'm asking God to change something about me, I'm actually welcoming chaos.
What's the big trend now? Synchronicities. They talk about synchronicities. Synchronicities is that chaos. You're inviting that chaos into your life.
Everything is fucking synchronicities, though, depending on how you look at it. Like,
If you watch
Hellier,
Hellier, everything's synchronicity. So
if you get to the level where everything becomes a synchronicity, you're on the trail of theurgy, right? It's that watery chaos that you invite into your life that manifests these things that now have meaning. Right? That's the light.
Holy shit. I just had a fucking stoned brain fart. I was making a joke about fucking Hellier. Have you guys seen that before?
Yeah.
There was fucking balloons in that too.
Oh, there were.
It's the year of the balloon.
Oh, no. See, I listened to the podcast about Hellier. I never watched it.
Wow, that's so funny. And there was a guy from the OTO in it too.
Yeah, they seem really, really down on like anything right wing and that. But it's like, guys, don't you see what's going on here? Like you're cutting, like everybody wants to cut their dick off, right? And the right wing is like the dick. You know, it's like, guys, Iapetus, our grandfather was telling you to pierce existence. Don't be passive. You've got to go out there and create. You know, that's what it comes from. That's what being mortal is. We've got to leave our mark on this place, or else what's the point of being mortal?
Trying to bob
Which goes
us
back into Prometheus. Right? So, Prometheus and his brother were special. They had something that the rest of the Titans didn't have, which was they had their view on past and future, right? Iapetus gave birth to, Prometheus, which was forethought, and Epimetheus, which was afterthought. And these two stuck together, right? They were never living in the present. They were always looking to the future or always looking to the past, right? And Prometheus was always looking to the future. Do you have that clip queued up?
Oh, yeah. Oh, you know what? Can you keep going and then I'll pull it up. I totally forgot.
You got it, yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So Prometheus decides, he looks around at the Titans and he knows something has to change. There's chaos being injected into the system. Kronos was the king or the ruler, the archon of the Titans. And, everybody else knelt, but the one guy who didn't kneel to Kronos was Prometheus. And he looked to his brother and said, we got to get out of this situation. This guy is insane, because eventually eternal life always leads to insanity. And that's really the Kronos energy. That's the Saturnian energy. And so all of these empires built off of Kronos will end up going insane. And all of this black cube imagery represents their will to dominate, to be the extended edge, the very edge of everything people can think, this sort of cube idea. We keep all of the minds in this cube, right? That's the magic that they hope for, but the magic that they always end up with is insanity, right? And so Prometheus
there was a thing with the cube with the Titans too. Remember, those guys were like trapped in a cube. It's interesting that you said that.
In the Eternals movie, yeah.
Oh, the Immortals or whatever the fuck. Or Internals.
Immortals, yeah. So he decides he's going to join with the newly hatched out of Kronos, the newly hatched Olympians. And he says, I'm going to join with the Olympians because Kronos is fucking batshit insane. And very few people can ever argue otherwise. He was eating his own children because the oracles told him one of your children will take your place. And that's the fear of every empire, is that the children will take the place. And what do we see in our own empire right now? We've got Nothing but 80-year-old batshit crazy fucking Kronos energy. Look at fucking Biden. What a great example of Kronos energy. He does not want to be replaced. He cannot let go of power, but you've got to let go of power. These pillars of heaven, the things that hold up authority, they have to be replaced. They get rotten. I mean, who wants to live in a rotten castle? You know, look at Jason, for example. Jason and the Argonauts. He spent the rest of his life after all of his adventures on the shore next to his rotting boat. And what ended up happening? That rotted boat ended up collapsing in on him and killing him. He couldn't let go. You've got to let go. You're immortal. You come from Iapetus. Iapetus gave you forethought. And forethought should lead you to the eventual end. You know you're mortal. Know thyself. That's what was on the front of the oracle at Delphi. Know thyself. And at your core, you are mortal. Stop thinking you're not. Have a beautiful mortality. Stop trying to think that you can control everything. You can't. You've got to get out of that mindset, and you've got to let chaos in.
Well, see,
you've got to let it happen.
That's the one thing I think people get confused. You can control yourself, actually. You may not be able to control the world around you, and I know sometimes some people will say, well, that's kind of like a bitch way out of it, but, like, sometimes, like, no, like, you could actually, someone could be in the same exact situation as me, and I could have a completely better and fuller life than the next person just because of the way I think and live.
Yeah. Just by changing your attitude, you can change everything.
In New York, and I'll even say that, in liberal New York, where there's all these horrible laws, I could still go out and do whatever the fuck I'm really wanting to do.
Right. You can't be thinking about what they want to put into you. Because once that happens, that's when you get caught. You know? They're always looking to Agent Smith you, but if you're riding the wave of chaos and change and light, they can't catch you. And this is really the elite secret, is they're always riding that wave. And that's their pillar of heaven. But the second they try to close their fist around that energy like they're doing right now, it all flows away like sand. It all flows away like sand. So this should be a real big white pill to everybody. They're closing their fist on you, which means the sand is going to flow away from them.
Unless you want to get fisted. There's two choices here. Unless you want to get fisted. I mean,
you're going to get fisted if you get caught up in their war. That's what's going to happen. And they want that war so badly. You can see it on their faces. They want that. They keep telling you, oh, we've got these Mexican white nationalists.
This is so. I'm glad we're getting into this territory, because where they're pushing this shit with like all these obvious FBI agents for the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers getting these long ass prison sentences, and we're supposed to like fucking be swayed by that. That's the thing that like.
They know the pillars of heaven are crumbling underneath of them. Their throne is collapsing. They have to set an example. And when those examples don't work anymore, when you can go out there and film, fucking Soros's home, and you can just ride those waves and you're not afraid, that's what makes them scared. What makes them scared is the lack of fear. If you don't have the fear, they get afraid. They start realizing that the spell stopped working.
I can't wait to do that.
Are you giving away the secret?
I'm not saying anything.
No. Nick was kind of like
within a few weeks. I do plan on doing that in the house in Long Island. Fucking why not?
There you go. We were talking about it earlier.
I'm like, it's blurred out on Google Maps. I want to know what it looks like. I'll send the baby orphan up and he'll tell me what it looks like.
Ride that wave, baby. That's the way to do it. You've got to sin without fear. Sin without fear. That is the lesson.
And the craziest thing is like what you guys even said. So like, see, I know like I'm like half retarded. So I took out insurance on this thing. Even though I bought something that basically, like, if it's going to die, it's going to tell me and come home. If it's going out of reach, it's going to tell me and come home. Like, I got like a good one that's like kind of like, you know, someone that's like not all there with it with electronics like myself. And yeah, like I can send it up like fucking almost a mile away. So like why not? Fuck it, you know? It's like. But what I was gonna get at, is the thing is that you guys were joking before about, oh, what if they shoot it down? And I'm like, I took out insurance on it, so technically for me, even though it would cost me $300 to replace it because of the way it got damaged, it's not going to fall under any of the other ones that would make it cheaper. So I'm sure I'm going to get hit with the $300 charge. But the thing is, I will have that footage pre-recorded.
Yeah, see, when I said that, I didn't know you had a live
It will
thing
already
going
be recorded on the drone.
Yeah.
So if you
I'm
want
on
to
your side now.
shoot it down, it is well worth the $300 for me to actually show proof that you're shooting a drone down over George Soros' house on Long Island. I'm totally all for it. Please, shoot it the fuck down. I'll pay for another one, and I'd love that footage.
Big Promethean energy.
And an hour later, I'll have another one come into my house, and I'll have the footage on fucking every platform.
Absolutely.
Fuck you.
So let's get back into it. So Prometheus joins with the Olympians. And in doing so, they defeat the Titans. After a big battle, the Titanomachy, it's not clear exactly how they fight them, but they win. The Olympians win.
Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Torches none can number.
That was the video. Sorry, I didn't mean to pull that up. I hit that by accident.
I was like, well, that was well timed.
Yeah.
Just fucking went right into it.
Go into the beginning. Let's get into it. This is called Prometheus Bound. It's made from a play by a guy in, I think it was like the 1st century AD, or maybe before that, maybe 1st century BC. Before the Nexus
on every shore rolls round the earth his unslumbering waters, observe me, and gaze at the fetters that coop me so high to this fanged chasm.
Never may Zeus who fosters
Water language always starts with the water language.
collide in his will against mine. Never by word may I trespass. This mind be mine forever and never grow faint.
Eternality of forethought. We can look hundreds of years in the
Sweeter
future.
to linger long through a life bright with confident hopes. But you make me shudder. Racked by infinite tortures none can number, refusing to bow before Zeus, deliberately honoring man to excess. Oh, Prometheus.
So he divides it up in these different chapters that sort of go over the whole story of
Tell the
Prometheus.
tale. Unveil it all.
It was all foreseen and settled long ago.
Creating a new family after his family was sent down to Tartarus. I'm not sure if this is Epimetheus or if it's one of the other gods or goddesses. They don't really show that. What do you think?
Could be Atlas.
No, because Atlas is holding up the heavens at this point.
Oh, he's already doing that?
Yeah.
My agony
He makes
was a
the
surprise.
he makes mankind after Titanomachy.
Okay. Well, look at that fucking Freemason compass symbol right there. They just kind of slid in at the
Speak of
end.
The miseries of men.
Well, that's the thing.
Children.
The
I
G
gave them sense
could
and
either
ways
be
to think.
Lucifer, right? Because they always equate Prometheus with Lucifer.
To unfold the
Yeah.
love with which I gave.
Or it could be God. And they'll show you that.
Shapes in dreams they used to drag their long lives through.
Whoa, holy shit.
This is all hand drawn too.
Until I
It
show
Oh,
really
this is
looks
like old
music.
school type animation.
Yeah.
Nice. It does look good.
So he's teaching man
man
all of the
the
sciences.
key to sciences.
There it is again.
This is a famous painting that he adapted to
Synthesis.
Prometheus.
Secret of all memory, sweet mother of the arts.
Secret of all memory.
I was the first to break beasts to the yoke. And I was the one, none other, to invent the seaman's ocean-roaming chariots with linen wings.
The ancient boatman.
The whole truth in a sentence, if you want it short, is every art to man Prometheus brought.
See the skull there? Skull always being the symbol for knowledge.
Now do you see my
He's a grower, not a shower.
graces?
Oh, wait, we can get into that too. The whole Greek obsession with small
Any
penises.
stay in beings of the dead.
Prometheus would have the smallest, because that would be the highest compliment.
Oh,
The
sweet.
dream in which men go, blind generation of the shackled, with never a breakthrough by mortals of Zeus's riveted system.
Look at that fucking perspective, though. It's so good.
Yeah.
That is the giant fennel stalk. That's what he brought fire down to mankind with. The inside of the fennel stalk can hold a spark for a long
Fire
time.
with its eye of flame. Do the day beings have that now?
Yes, and shall learn 1,000 arts from it.
Climbing up the pillars of heaven. Going up the Kabbalah tree.
Studied sin is shame to a man who's wise.
I knew it well. Unwillingly, by my own free will, I sinned.
Seen that one before, right? Seen that one before, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So in the myths, Epimetheus gave away all of the special powers to all of the animals. So some had fur, some had all the rest of this stuff, but there was nothing left for mankind. So Prometheus took his power of forethought and put it into us. See, so that was our one
Here
power.
I am caught beneath this yoke, compelled. I, the one who snared within a fennel stalk the source of fire. Man's great teacher of the arts, his universal boon.
Listen to this part right here. This is
the
great.
sin for which I pay the price. Clamped beneath the naked sky and shackled here.
The eagle of Zeus.
I am not one when fortune strikes to want the whole world stricken too.
Is he doing tarot?
Right now, he's actually rolling up all of the evils.
Anguish. Fear.
He's trying to protect his family by giving it a name and then putting it away.
Hate. Violence.
But now you must not succor men beyond all merit, careless of your own sad state. For still I think that from these claims you shall be loosed, not weaker by one whit than Zeus.
10,000 pangs and agonies must bend me before I shall have shaken off these chains which pen me. Necessity has twice the strength of artifice.
I love that line.
Who then is controller of necessity?
Three-personed fate and the unforgetting furies.
Surely Zeus is not less strong than they.
He is. At least he cannot dodge what is ordained.
Two can play at that creating people game. So Zeus is creating Pandora. There were no women before this. She was the first woman.
Yeah, existence was just a sausage fest up to this point.
Prometheus, man of forethought. You need your own forethinker now to pry you free.
I guess that is a Prometheus that breathed life into
So
people.
let the lightning fork and coil about my head. Let thunder rip the sky. Wild winds stampede and wreck. A hurricane to rock the rooted world from its pedestal. Let sea waves slash their tide across the path of stars. Let him fling my carcass deep where the sterile eddy stirs of Ananke's spell. He shall
Jesus
not
Christ.
kill me
Look at all that blood.
still.
Every day, the eagle would eat his liver.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Release the evils.
Bow down, adore and cringe before each ruler of the day. For me, your Zeus is less than naught. So let him play at what he wants, and lord it for his little day. His time for ruling gods is short.
Pain, anguish,
Unlocking the
fear,
evils out of man's
anger,
seed.
hate, violence.
Because
what he must suffer, I am.
in the Golden Age, it was said that man would just sleep and then be renewed. So it wasn't like they were immortal. They would sleep and go to the underworld and come back renewed. Wall of flesh right here.
The pitiful strength of their weaknesses.
This is a little bit like the water language right there. DNA structures.
Generation of the shackled, with never a breakthrough by mortals of Zeus's riveted system.
Are you here to gaze and grieve with me so full of wounds? Forget it now, and don't concern yourself.
See, these are lines from the play, but he's not saying them to Io, which was in the play.
Be careful not to hurt yourself.
Theurgy. Becoming like the gods by putting on the mask. Developing forethought using theurgy. Developing prophecy. Weaving of fate.
Be careful not to hurt yourself.
All coming from the fennel stalk that carried the fire. So much symbolism in that. I love it.
What
Yeah, I
is that
wanted to
from
pull
exactly?
something up. Yeah.
It's from a
That's-
play called Prometheus Bound.
Okay.
And in Prometheus Bound, one of the main characters that he was talking to was Io. And you'll love this, NY. Io is the one with the horns. She's a goddess in Greek with the horns, exactly like Hathor.
Really?
Yeah. And so a lot of this play is him talking to this Hathor character who's being endlessly hounded by a gadfly. Right? So the bull being, or the cow being endlessly stalked by the gadfly because Hera found out that Zeus was having an affair with Io, and so he turned her into a cow to hide her. And then Hera requested the cow, and he wouldn't let her have him. So she put a giant to watch over Io, and Io eventually got away from it because of Hermes. Hermes ended up making the giant go to sleep with his song, and then killed the giant, and then she got away, and then Hera sent the gadfly after her. But she's definitely a Hathor character. If you look into Io, it's also one of the moons of Jupiter, one of the moons of Zeus.
I want to pull up a picture for you. That popped up in my head when I saw this. It's a tarot card, actually. The Lover's tarot card for the Golden Dawn deck. So I don't know if that could make a difference here. Let me try to. It's such a pain in the ass doing this. I think this is it. Yes. Here we go. Now, it may not all be the same exact way, but I see the same things. I see the rock. I see the snakes. I mean, now the chains are on her, but they were on him. The female, the man. A lot of the same exact actual imagery. I don't know, could be. See, this is another thing, too, which I will say, I think in tarot cards, there's like going up, going down, maybe even sideways and left, that there's meanings to these things. So this could be maybe emphasizing a different, same thing, but just the opposite of what we just watched.
One of the methods that they use in Greek mythology is they do use this inversion concept. So this reminds me a lot more of Perseus and Andromeda, right? Because Perseus comes down and slays the beast that was going to eat Andromeda, right? And in doing so, he released her from being crucified to the rock or crucified to reality. And when they... Again, like when you look at the oracles, you see that you've got this male energy, goes into a female energy, comes back into a male energy, all over and over again. And in the creation of that wall of flesh, because every time you're switching between the male and female energy, you're creating a child. And that child sort of takes you closer and closer to the divine, right? And so in this version of it, it would be the masculine saving the feminine. And in the Promethean version, and at least in Prometheus Bound, it's the female sort of saving the male because he's able to explain himself and his defiance of Zeus to this female character. So it's like this it's sort of like mirroring. You've got the genders mirroring themselves, bringing out closer and closer legacies to the divine, right? And you can see that sort of in the symbol too on the side. You've got the cross above the triangle, and that triangle has the sun in it. So the triangle would be more of a goddess symbol in that case, the god on top, right? And the sun coming up beneath, right? But the Lover's cards is the perfect representation of that Eros energy, right? So you've got the Lovers transforming back and forth into the wall of flesh, which would be the wall of reality, the veil that keeps us from the divine while also leading us to the divine. So it's like nature, the wall of flesh leads us to the divine through that alchemical process.
Very well said.
Lots of stuff in there. But yeah, so Prometheus creates humanity. And in doing so, he creates for himself a new family. And he decides that this new family is more of a priority than anything the Olympians want to do. And so in one of the stories...
now, wait, you said
Zeus,
he creates what again?
He creates man out of the clay,
okay,
right?
Okay.
And he's forming it. And his brother Epimetheus, also another way of saying memory, afterthought, Epimetheus is breathing life into all of these forms. So Zeus loves Epimetheus and Prometheus more than anybody else after Titanomachy, because they decide to join with Zeus and give him the forethought that gives him the ability to defeat the Titans, to defeat his father, right? And so he gives them all of these riches and all of this love and all of this affection, all of this attention. And so he says, why don't you create all of the earth, all of the living things on the earth? So Prometheus is giving out all of these powers. He's giving wings to the birds. He's giving fins to the fish. He's giving, massive teeth to the bears and all the rest of the stuff. And he forgets all of the powers reserved for mankind. And so they don't have any of those powers. So Prometheus decides to give them his forethought as their power. And in doing so, he decides that he loves them as his family, not the Olympians. So he's going to defy the pillars of heaven at that point. And so Zeus asked Prometheus, he says, now we're going to give the sacrifices back to the gods. And so Prometheus, who loves mankind more than anyone else, decides that he's going to give mankind the meat of the bull. And so meat of the bull is now dressed up in this disgusting layer of stomach tissue, right? So he's hiding the stomach tissue around.
That sounds tasty.
Right? And he's got this other pile where he's got bones that are glistening in fat, right? And so the bones that are glistening in fat, they look crystalline and beautiful. And so he gives Zeus the choice. He says, Zeus, which would you rather have as the sacrifice to you? Would you rather have the half that is this glistening fat? Or would you rather have this disgusting entrails and, all the rest of this stuff that's covering up all of the good meat that he wants for mankind?
You
and
see,
Zeus,
Nick was shaking his head when I said that, but I made the right choice.
Zeus picks the glistening fat.
Yeah.
And he takes one bite and he's like, this is bones. How could you give me bones? And so he gets pissed off and he says, I'm taking away fire from mankind. So now mankind doesn't have any fire anymore. And, this pisses off Prometheus so much that he climbs the pillars of heaven to bring fire back to mankind. And fire is the birth of all the sciences. So now you've got warmth in the nighttime. Now you have, the ability to forge swords. You've got the ability to have the 7 holy sciences. And you see in the version of this that they call the what do they call it? The book of the Bible that they leave out. What's that called? The book of Enoch.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. So in the book of Enoch, it's an inversion of the story of Prometheus to where, the fallen ones, which would be, the Olympians or the Titans, they pervert the 7 holy sciences. Well, actually, they're giving it to mankind, and mankind can do whatever they want with those 7 holy sciences. So you'll find that the Hebrew version of all of these stories is always an inversion because, they hate the nations, the Goyim. And so all the Goyim stories have to be turned on their head because that's how they have power over them. And you find this over and over again in the Bible. You find it again with Iapetus or Japheth, because Japheth is the white men, that's the Greeks that they want to destroy because they're the Goyim. And you find that over and over and over again as they'll invert these stories and then put the blame on all the other people, right? And so, you've got all these stories from Greek mythology that they end up putting in the Bible and shifting it around and shifting the characters around to make the bad guys in this other version the good guys. And it goes back to the Canaanites. So the Canaanites were occupied by Egypt, right? They talk about that with Moses, right? So the Canaanites, which is, pre-Jewish, pre-Hebraic, separation, they were all one people. They decide that they're going to make their god Set, because the god of Egypt was Osiris, and Osiris was the bad guy. So Set, this Saturnian influence, that's going to be the god of the Hebrews, and that's why they put the cube on their forehead and their forearm, is because they're worshiping the anti-god of Egypt. And you find this again in Gnosticism. So in Gnosticism, they're making fun of the Hebrews because the Hebrews are braying like donkeys. Donkeys are the symbol for Set.
You know what I was thinking? You mentioned the black cube, right? You talking about like the black cube that they put on their head and stuff? Now, now the thing that they put on the back of their head. gonna sound fucking crazy, but I was just like, this is going into some of the eye stuff that's going to be coming out next week. Your pupil, when it dilates, it gets pulled out. Actually, like across. There's 4 muscles that pull out. But when your pupil goes small, it screws closed. Now, if you think about the way hair growth is on top of your head, it kind of spirals out of the same part that you're putting that black cap on.
I think I said this before. There's something about the crystallization of hair. There's something about that, Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, somehow hair is associated. Like, you've got Samson. When he grows his hair out, he has this power, but when it's shaved off, he loses it. Right? And then there's this idea that, the witch's hair is somehow their repository for their power. And there's something about the conscious growing of hair. And you find this in voodoo, too. You steal the hair, you steal the essence. There's something about hair and theurgy that's really closely linked.
Oh, I have actually wondered about that before. I mean, I have wondered, I have, heard people in, layman's term kind of actually use, someone was like, oh, I think if you take a bunch of, hairs and strung them together and threw light down them, that's exactly how optic cable works. So it's it makes you look at cats use their whiskers for senses. Animals use their hair, thicker hair that sticks out of them for sensing.
Porcupines.
Yeah, so that has to be some.
It's all tools.
It could be censored. For something.
Oh, it gets so much deeper than that because hair is only one molecule off from being chitin. And chitin is what bugs use to protect themselves. Not just bugs, also mushrooms. They're covered in chitin. That's what they use to protect themselves. Now, chitin is only 1 molecule or so off from cellulose. And cellulose is what bark is what trees are made out of. So this chitin, cellulose, hair, it's all the same thing, and we're all using the same thing.
We're related somehow.
Right. Well,
Distant
we're all
cousins.
using the same kind of armor. It's all just expressed in different ways. And that's the emanationism. It's coming right through there, and it's right in front of you.
A couple more changes, I'm going to turn into a tree then.
But this is the thing about alchemy is when you combine study of the natural world with theurgy, you get alchemy. That's what it is, And so all of these sciences come out of alchemy. And it goes back all the way to Prometheus, bringing that fire, because you find that the fire is holy and sacred in alchemy. That fire produces these changes, and then that's the emanation, that's the light, that's the heat, that's the source coming from God. And the idea with Prometheus too is when he's bringing you the fire, you look into the fire and you can see the future, right? There's all this stuff wrapped up in these very simple concepts that we take for granted because we don't have the ability to abstract them into these analogies that start to bring us closer to the divine.
So I always, when I go camping or even just light a fire in my backyard, after 5 or 10 minutes, that shit becomes better than TV.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
And I don't even know what I'm looking at, but I can't take my eyes off of it.
This is what I'm saying. These portals are everywhere. These portals that lead us to these infinite other realities, infinite states of mind.
Isn't candles are almost universal.
Yeah.
See, this is how I practice my theurgy is I sing while I'm driving. Right? Because as I'm driving, I have to focus on the road. And I'm a truck driver by trade, right? So I have to focus on the road. And as I'm singing, it creates a disassociation. So I have to be focused on the road, but my subconscious mind is engaged in the song. And then I start to see things in my mind's eye, not on the road itself. I'm fully paying attention to the road, but at the same time, my subconscious mind is free to wander, and it creates that sort of unification effect.
Yes. I used to do that when I was younger, and I kind of stopped for some reason. But I've been
We all do it.
I've been taking
don't-
my stepkid to school lately, and she just fucking like looks out the window and makes up songs about what she's seeing on the side of the road, and all of a sudden I'm like tuning into that, and the driving becomes like second nature.
Bingo. Yep. You can find theurgy in everything. Iamblichus talks about these very specific things, but he also says you can find it in everything. It's all around you. That is our birthright. That's the gift that's given to us by this Promethean energy. And this Promethean energy is by its very nature opposed to the pillars of heaven that are put on our backs. You know, this is, I mean, look, you can't get closer to Jesus Christ than Prometheus. He sacrifices everything, fully knowing of his sin, and gives it to his family, gives it to his loved ones. You see, and he's crucified and stabbed in the side every day. Where do you think they got this thing? And why do you think they call him Satan? Why do you think they call him Lucifer? It's an inversion. That's what they're trying to do. But really, if you think about the Eucharist, that's what's eternal about him, is the body and the blood that he sacrificed being crucified on this Caucasus mountain, going back to Iapetus again, you know, the Caucasus mountain every day. And who releases him in the end? It's the son of Zeus. It's Heracles that releases him from his bonds. Because one of the reasons why Zeus was so afraid is because it's the same cycle again. Zeus was told that your son will destroy you and take your place, just like what happened with Kronos. But he did something different. What Zeus did differently was he spread his seed to the four corners of the earth. And this is why Hera hated him, is because he decentralized his power. He wanted to get it out there to as many places as possible, because once that power is decentralized, there is no throne to take, right? And this was before he started doing that. This was when he was starting to go mad with that eternal life, with that eternal power. And instead of doing that, he decides, you know what? I'm going to go spread it instead of keeping it all to myself. And so this is why Zeus is kind of a confusing character for a lot of people, is because, is he good? Is he evil? Is he, you know, is he bad? What is he doing here? But he's the sovereign. And as the sovereign, he decides he's going to spread that seed. And as he spreads the seed, he gains knowledge, right? He gains more than he gives away. And instead of worrying about...
Selfish fuck.
Right. He gains more by giving away, you know?
Okay.
So there's a reciprocal relationship there that is tied up in this formlessness, that's found in instinct. It's found in the ability to think outside of the box, but we're also stuck in that box. This is why they're obsessed with Kronos energy.
Well, even if you think of like a magic sense and crossing the abyss, if you think like that is actual magic, you know, part of magic, you are, in a sense, like giving up this world for an experience, you know, and wherever you want to call it, you know, and then when you come back, you do have the knowledge of the other side. So you did actually give up a sacrifice to gain something.
What did Jesus do when he returned from the dead? He gave people that knowledge, right? Mm-hmm. And what did Prometheus, they don't really talk about Prometheus after he came down, but I tell you what, when you sing his name, see, this is the thing. You find that resonance point, and you find that resonance point with the divine, and you start to understand what it means to have that eternal defiance to the pillars of heaven. And it's a calming effect. It's calm defiance. It's almost like a ghillie suit. You know what a ghillie suit is? It's like this camouflaged outfit that people can't see around anymore. And when you have that calm energy, other people can't pick up on the defiant angle, you know? So you can be defiant in a crowd full of followers and they'll never pick you out. Normally, they Agent Smith you, right? He's the one. He's the guy. We got to go for him. But when you've got that Promethean energy, you can be calm and defiant until it's time to make your move. And nobody can pick you out. It's like an assassin energy, right? Just keep that in mind, guys. Look, there's a lot more to this stuff than the physical world can embody. And when something happens like this guy going into Paul Pelosi's house and it doesn't make any sense, there's a Promethean energy there.
It's hammer time, baby.
Right. Hammer time. How did he get there? How did he get through? It's not going to make sense to you. It's not a physical thing.
Yeah,
and
it's not meant to.
That, right.
No, that made no sense.
He was crazy like a fucking fox. Let me tell you. He was connected to something else. And we have to keep that in mind. The physical world is not all there is. It's a foolish game to think that the physical world is all that there is. And once this Promethean energy starts waking up a little bit more in mankind, we're going to see this happen again and again. None of this makes sense because as they're grasping, that sand is slipping through their fingers. As they get more afraid, that power is going to be slipping away from them.
Hey, I want to ask you something just because my mom always tunes into any fucking live thing I do. And she doesn't usually text me during it, but she keeps saying it's the oneness. And does that mean anything to you?
The oneness is that chaotic, watery darkness. Like that's the water language. That's the thing we're speaking to each other because we're speaking to ourselves. That's the oneness.
I would say like that's Kether on the Tree of Life. That's
absolutely.
There you go, Mom. You were onto something.
Yeah. The oneness with Source. It's like almost just. It's like for me, what I would say is like being absorbed into the fabric of creation.
Zeno's paradox. You know about Zeno's paradox? Zeno's paradox is really interesting. So Zeno says before you can go all the way to something, you have to go halfway to something, right? That makes sense. Like it's just a logical thing. You have to travel halfway first, but then you have to travel halfway again, right?
Halfway
and you have
twice?
to travel halfway again, and you have to travel halfway again, and you have to keep traveling halfway. So how can you ever actually end up at that destination if you're only traveling halfway?
That's my hometown. It's called Halfway, Oregon, and I'm not even fucking joking.
There you go. So what he was saying is that motion can't exist because you always end up only going half. You can never actually reach your destination. And if motion can't exist, then everything has to be one thing. Because you're not actually moving. You're just already there already. And if you can picture that in your mind,
I've been there before,
Promethean,
but it always fades away after about 4 hours.
Why do those athletes go through their mental training before they get out there on the field and do their thing? Because they're there already. Why do you manifest things? Because you're there already. That's the Promethean in embodiment, right? You have to find that place where you're there already, and then it comes to you. It's a magnetic frequency. It's a beautiful thing. And once you get in that mindset, there's nothing you can't do. It's something way deeper than just the sciences. I'll tell you that much, or at least the sciences we know of right now. The power of analogy goes way beyond anything the power of science has to offer. Science wouldn't exist without the power of analogy. Because philosophy came first. Philosophy of science came first, and then you have the science, and philosophy is nothing but analogy. Nothing but analogy.
My brother majored in philosophy, and it made him drop out of college.
Exact. Oh man, the Grove of Arcadia is not what it used to be.
Yep.
No, Academos. That's what it was. That's why Plato called it the Academy. And you know what Plato means? Plato was his wrestling name. He was literally a wrestler. It means broad-shouldered one.
Whoa.
Right.
Even so back then, they had stage names.
Wrestler names, dude. And what are we living through right now? So Plato always talks about the three souls, right? He talks about the three souls in the Republic. You know, the three souls is the idea of thesis, antithesis, synthesis.
Yeah.
Right? And so the wrestler game, we've got the Democrats, the Republicans, and then whatever comes out of them. And they forgot it. They forgot. They don't know any of this stuff anymore. They're all a bunch of fucking, octogenarian idiots. They're falling apart in front of our eyes. They have no idea. They are the embodiment of this, absolute Saturnian energy, right? As it's going insane and eating its young. They're eating us. We are their young. They want to scare us into not opposing them. The pillars of heaven are crumbling. They're rotten to the core.
But we have to realize we can rebuild them, though, I think.
Right. But we have to do it in a decentralized way, in the way that maintain that Zeus energy. We have to share with one another. We can't keep it for ourselves.
Yep.
The families are crumbling. That's the white pill. We can see that energy. And once we tap into it, guess what? There's nothing that can stop us.
Why did death show up at the coronation?
What's that?
Yeah, that was fucking weird, right?
There was a fucking Grim Reaper dude at the coronation of King Charles, and it's like viral.
Yeah.
We can take it one of two ways,
weird,
guys.
It's very weird.
There's only two ways to interpret it.
Well,
either their time has come or they think our time has come.
No, I like the first one better.
I
The
like
first
that one. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's funny? Now that was the coronation. There was a part in I think it's in the first part that comes out next week when the Occult Rejects, I cover Occult Symbolism in Your Eye. Now I don't know if that was like literally. It looks
But
like
we-
it
but-
looks
but we all
looked
saw
like
what we saw.
No. I'm saying no, but I'm saying I'm going along with if that's actually what it was supposed to have been. Like it's Sith and someone walking by.
You're the first one I saw talk about it, so it's your fault.
Yeah, no. So like I'm just saying, let's just go with that's what it was. You know what I'm saying? If you look at your cornea under an electron microscope, your cornea looks like a Sith.
Really?
And at a coronation.
Wow. Shit.
It all comes back to the eye. That's the filter. That's the thing that brings. I'm telling you, once you embrace the power of analogy, NY, I know you're picking this stuff up about the eye from someplace else. Once you get that power of analogy, then you start to come to deeper and deeper realizations about the reality we live in. And they can't take it away from you. They can't take that away from you.
It's crazy, and only because I really don't want to get into it now because we're an hour and 56 minutes in, but like I did want to kind of get a little bit into the eye, and I was going to ask you because I do think Prometheus being underneath the Christmas tree in New York City, I do show in this eye series how I do think the cones and the rods and other parts in your eye is actually Christmas. And I do think a lot of things that you were saying about Prometheus, him being underneath it, lighting up the lights. It's just, I didn't. This will turn the show into 3 hours. So I didn't want to ask. I didn't want to ask your opinion. Why? I was going to ask you, why do you think he's under the Christmas tree? That will be another discussion. But
they think they're bringing light to us. They think they're bringing light to us.
The cones and the rods in our eyes are actually, I mean, maybe it's just coincidence that somehow they came up with the idea of wiring Christmas lights the same exact way our rods and cones are wired in our eyes.
Yeah, what came first, the chicken or the egg, folks?
Look, I think the power of analogy is fleeing from them. They've become pure materialists at this point.
And their AI fucking suck. Like, dude, I don't think it can replace us. I don't know how you guys feel, but I don't fear that at all.
I've talked about AI Jesus a little bit I think there's something to that.
Yeah, no,
Now,
I agree with that. I agree with that too. Yeah.
Is there an AI Jesus that's going to help us out, or is there an AI Jesus?
Elon Musk, baby, sign up for his Patreon.
Oh.
Blah 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 blah.
I can't with that anymore.
He's no Prometheus, dude. He's no Prometheus. Maybe.
Hey, us three don't believe it, but there are many out there who do.
It's not too late. Maybe we can reach him with the power of analogy, because spells, these illusions have magic, you know? I mean, we don't have to be black-pilled on all these people. Maybe there's something that we can reach. I mean, this stuff we're talking about has the power. This is what their power is based off of. And if they see that it's starting to shift and it's starting to change, maybe they could change too. I don't know.
Yeah, this is what I think is crazy. And then after this, we'll wrap it up, because it is going on now. But the crazy thing just with Elon Musk, just the craziest thing that with the total contradiction, fucking flopping that I have seen, that I guarantee you, and I'm going to be straight up honest, I guarantee you any fucking podcast that I've ever been associated with at some point in their show or in social media had probably stated that a chip implanted in us is the mark of the fucking beast. And now we got motherfuckers out there cucking and simping for fucking Elon and paying him.
More than I am fucking comfortable with.
Straight the fuck up. I'm not saying he's the Antichrist, but I'm being totally honest with you. All you motherfuckers who are hearing me right now are pissed off. You know, at one point in your fucking mind, it has come out of your mouth that what's going on right now was the fucking mark of the beast. Give it the fuck up and get honest with yourself and move the fuck on. It's okay. We've all been duped. We've all been duped somehow. You got duped. It's okay. Let's move on and let's get rid of this dumb shit that's going on right now.
Authenticity has power, and once you reach that point of authenticity, they can start to see it. But it comes down to that. And how do you reach them and resonate their authenticity back? You know, we got to be those guitar strings, right? By plucking those guitar strings and hitting that resonance point, you can hit that resonance point in somebody else and bring that authenticity out. There you go. That's why. Okay. So, back to the idea of the protogenous, right? Phanes protogenous erupts from the egg, right? He's the one who brings all this stuff together with love. He was originally called Eros. Maybe we can hit that resonance point on those snake strings, and bring out that new egg in somebody else's understanding, in somebody else's mind, because that's what we're trying to awaken is people's minds. And if it stays that Orphic Egg, the Orphic mysteries, who was Orpheus? He was the lyre player. He was the one playing that harp. He resonated with people on that level that got them to awaken in themselves, Maybe that's the place we leave it,
Yeah, we'll leave it there. Very well said. Very well said. Thank you so much, man. Like I say, every time you come on, it's always an amazing, deep and provoking and thoughtful conversation. And I can't thank you enough, man. Let everybody know where they can find your stuff.
Just go hit up that Headless Giant podcast. I'm buzzing right now, guys. I got so much energy. So, yeah, I got an interview tomorrow with a hemp farmer, and he's talking about making hemp batteries. So tune in for that one. It's going to be great. Hemp batteries.
Shit. I just subscribed to your podcast, so I'll fucking definitely listen
to
it.
Man. Yeah.
Good.
Absolutely, guys. So thanks for having me on. This has been absolutely fantastic. I love to share that Promethean energy. Get that quiet resistance that's just building, and that Promethean energy keeps you calm, relaxed until it's time to fucking act. And you can do it.
Very well said. Thank you, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, his links are all on the bottom right now for people who are checking out the live and people listening to this after it drops. The links are in the show notes. And Colby, last but not least, let everybody know again about your show, please.
I'm definitely least on this show, but not in general. ConspiracyPlaytime.com. For my other show, I even wearing the T-shirt that my mom gave me for Christmas, and I'm glad that she got to take the show in a different direction because, I said, she doesn't usually fucking interject. But
that's what's up. So, shout out to his moms, man. That's pretty cool.
She's our biggest fan. I mean, I believe that. So Disinfobation you can find anywhere other than YouTube, and Apple. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you both again for a great Friday night. I had a great time. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.